On April 1st, 2026, the Utah County Sheriff's Office called a press conference in Spanish Fork. The announcement concerned a murder committed 51 years earlier. The victim had been dead since 1974. The suspected killer had been dead since 1989. He had even admitted involvement before his execution, and the case was still open. Then, Sheriff Mike Smith gave Laura Ann Aime's family the answer investigators had refused to manufacture from suspicion. Biological evidence recovered from Laura's body had produced a DNA profile. It matched Ted Bundy. For more than half a century, Bundy's name had hovered over Laura's murder. Now, for the first time, the case no longer depended on his word. Ted Bundy has been dissected so many times that his story has almost stopped resembling a criminal record. It's become folklore, the law student, the Volkswagen, the fake injuries, the escapes, the courtroom performance, the endless speculation about how many women he really killed. Laura Ann Aime's case cuts through that folklore. This is a story about a 17-year-old girl, evidence preserved by people who could not possibly know what future laboratories would be able to do with it, and 2 old vials of blood that sat in Florida until someone understood their value. It is also a reminder that a famous serial killer's victim list is not a finished document. It's a collection of convictions, confessions, suspicions, and unresolved files, each resting on a different level of proof. And in 2026, one of those files changed. Before Laura became another name associated with Ted Bundy, she was the older sister who brought the younger children along with her. She grew up around animals and open country. Her family remembered her as outgoing, warm, and protective. She loved riding horses. She sometimes used her own money to buy candy for her siblings because she enjoyed seeing them happy. Her younger sister, Michelle Impala, remembered Laura feeding pieces of red licorice to her horse. After Laura died, the horse stopped eating them. That detail does not tell us how she was killed. It tells us what disappeared with her. On the night of October 31st, 1974, Laura attended a Halloween gathering in Utah County. Witnesses said she left alone, apparently intended to buy something from a convenience store. She did not return. On November 27, 2 college students hiking near State Road 92 in American Fork Canyon found her body down an embankment, several feet from the highway. Laura had been bound. She had suffered severe blunt force injuries. She had been strangled with a nylon stocking and left without clothing. Investigators believed her body had been placed there relatively recently. The reconstruction raised an even darker possibility. Laura may have remained alive for days after her abduction. By the time Laura disappeared, Ted Bundy had moved from Washington to Salt Lake City to attend law school at the University of Utah. Young women had already begun disappearing in the Pacific Northwest. Now Utah was seeing its own sequence of abductions and murders. The geography fit, the timing fit, elements of the violence fit, and eventually Bundy himself acknowledged responsibility for Laura's death. That sounds like the end of an investigation. It wasn't. Bundy's acknowledgements came in the final days before his execution, when he was releasing fragments of information about murders across several states. He wanted more time. Investigators wanted locations, names, and recoverable remains. Truth had become the last currency he possessed. In Laura's case, he offered no useful detail that independently demonstrated knowledge of the crime. The Utah County Sheriff's Office and the county attorney therefore refused to convert his statement into official closure. Other leads and possible suspects had existed. The physical evidence available at the time could not establish a case that investigators believed would survive in court, so Laura's file remained open. That decision can look excessively cautious only because we know now Bundy really did kill her. In real time, investigators faced a manipulative serial murderer who had lied repeatedly, controlled information, and understood exactly how badly families wanted answers. A confession may be true and still be insufficiently tested. For decades, Laura's case occupied that uncomfortable space. Bundy was the overwhelmingly likely killer, but overwhelmingly likely was not the label investigators were willing to place on a closed homicide file. The breakthrough began with restraint exercised in 1974. The original investigators preserved biological evidence recovered from Laura's body. More than 50 years later, Sheriff Mike Smith described the material as having remained in remarkably good condition. Then, in 2025, Detective Sergeant Mike Reynolds and cold case detective Jacob Hall reviewed Laura's file as part of a wider examination of Utah County's unsolved cases. The evidence had not changed. The laboratory head, Utah State Crime Laboratory, had adopted new software and analytical technology in 2023. It could obtain usable information from DNA samples that were tiny, degraded by age, or mixed with material from more than one person. Analysts selected the pieces of evidence with the greatest chance of yielding a result. From the old biological material, they isolated a single male DNA profile. That profile was uploaded into CODIS, the nationwide system through which law enforcement laboratories compare DNA profiles from crime scenes and known offenders. Then, Utah received a hit from Florida. The profile matched Ted Bundy. But that result depended on another piece of evidence surviving somewhere else. When Bundy was executed in 1989, his full DNA profile was not sitting in a national database waiting for cold cases to find it. CODIS was not yet operating as the national system it would become. Years later, investigators looking into cold murders discovered an extraordinary gap. Ted Bundy's DNA was not in CODIS. Florida authorities eventually located 2 vials of his blood. They had been collected in 1978 during the investigation into the murder of 12-year-old Kimberly Leach. The blood was tested in 2011. Despite its age, it produced a complete profile, and that profile was uploaded into CODIS. 15 years later, Laura's evidence found it. The 2026 identification was therefore not a single flash of laboratory genius. It was a chain. Someone collected biological material from Laura in 1974. Someone preserved it through decades of changing personnel, budgets, storage systems, and investigative priorities. Someone preserved Bundy's blood in Florida. A cold case investigator noticed that one of America's most notorious murderers was missing from the national DNA database. A laboratory produced his reference profile in 2011. Utah adopted better analytical tools in 2023, and 2 detectives opened Laura's evidence again in 2025. Remove any of those links, and the press conference in 2026 may never happen. The match did not merely confirm a popular theory, it changed the status of the case. Bundy was no longer attached to Laura's murder because his movements were compatible, because the injuries resembled other crimes, or because he made a vague admission while trying to postpone his execution. His DNA was recovered from evidence associated with Laura's body and matched to the reference profile held in Florida. The Utah County Sheriff's Office closed the homicide. That distinction may sound bureaucratic. For Laura's family, it separates living with a likely answer from receiving an evidentiary one. It also removes Bundy from the role he preferred, gatekeeper. For years, investigators and families had to bargain with him for fragments. He could disclose a name, withhold a location, distort a timeline, or offer just enough truth to keep people listening. DNA does not negotiate with him. Utah now has a modern crime scene profile that other agencies can compare with evidence from unresolved cases. At the 2026 announcement, Sergeant Reynolds said investigators believed one confidential case outside Utah County might also be nearing closure because of the information they had supplied. Officials did not identify it. That silence should be respected. Bundy's notoriety creates a powerful temptation to attach him to every unresolved disappearance that overlaps with his travels. Some suspected cases may eventually be confirmed, others may be excluded. Both results would be valuable. A match could restore a victim's name to the documented record. An exclusion could pull a case out of Bundy's shadow and force investigators to look again for the person who actually committed it. This is how the forensic record can expand without becoming a mythology machine. The point is not to inflate Bundy's body count. The point is to replace inherited certainty with case-specific evidence. At the press conference, Michelle Impala said she had not not even realize Laura's case was still officially open. She thanked the investigators and the people who still cared more than 50 years later. The public will remember the headline because it contains Ted Bundy's name. Laura's family will remember something else. A 17-year-old girl vanished on Halloween in 1974. Her body was recovered in a canyon. The man believed to have killed her offered a few words before his execution, and for decades those words were all he was willing to give. But the evidence outlived him. It waited in storage while forensic science caught up, and when he finally spoke, Bundy no longer controlled the answer. Laura Ann Aime's case is closed. The record around Ted Bundy is not. This is the first GrimSpotting investigation in a 4-part forensic series on Ted Bundy. Next, the number repeated in almost every documentary and article about him: 30 victims, and why that apparently simple figure is built from radically different kinds of evidence.